I first read Sabriel when I was but a wee babby. Well, maybe I shouldn't say read. Rather, my father would read to me chapters from it each night as a bedtime story, in contrast to your standard picture book fare. I quite enjoyed it, although I constantly pestered my father with precocious questions as he read, as Waynes are wont to do. It's these questions which have stayed with me, even as the finer details of Sabriel have been forgotten with the fog of ages. The first question I asked was what talc was, as the word is mentioned when Sabriel meets a soldier, and I had never heard it before. My father said that it was like baby powder, and I nodded sagely, not wanting to appear foolish for not knowing what baby powder was either. The second question was what cat balm was. My father said that it was like catnip, and I grinned contentedly, for I already knew what that was beforehand, although I found it strange that the cat, which was not actually a cat, would get intoxicated off of catnip when it was not, in fact, actually a cat. And finally, the third question was incredulous disbelief at the presence of a bus in the story during the climactic confrontation with Caragor. I may have only been a wee bairn, but I knew enough to know that in fantasy novels you simply couldn't have things like buses in the story. Fantasy novels had horses and carriages, not buses. My father said, somewhat beleagueredly at this point, that as this was Garth Nix's book, Garth Nix could do whatever he darn well pleased with it. My father was conscious not to curse in front of the young un, after all. This moment was something of a revelation to my young, innocent mind. It was the moment I first realized that fantasy did not have to be bound by cliché or what was simply standard. Rather than being a copy or clone of Lord of the Rings, a fantasy could do or be whatever it darn well pleased. And that important lesson has ensured a special place in my heart for Sabriel to this day. However, despite these three questions and the resulting lessons being deeply important to me, I don't actually remember anything about Sabriel beyond that. As such, I've decided to have another older man read the book to me once again, this time through the audiobook narrated by Tim Curry.
I see you shiver with anticipation.
Let's see how my childhood favorite holds up. Oh yeah, and for those of you wondering why it took me until the book's climax to notice the presence of buses, well, I was but a wee babby after all.
Patient.
And we're back. Man, Tim Curry was having entirely too much just enough fun playing Mogget. What is Sabriel? Sabriel is the story of Sabriel, a young girl and necromantic prodigy whose father is Abhorsen, the most powerful necromancer in the world. Although Abhorsen isn't just any ordinary necromancer. Instead of bringing back haunting spirits, he hunts down vengeful wraiths and makes sure that the border between life and death remains secure. So, when one day he gets captured and presumed dead by a mysterious evil force, it's up to Sabriel to find him and rescue him, before something terrible happens with the powers Abhorsen keeps at bay. How does the world of Sabriel work? Okay, so in Sabriel there are two main countries. To the south there lies Encelsdiere, a place akin to Edwardian England where science holds sway, and to the north, separated by a massive wall, there lies the Old Kingdom, a dark, savage land where chaos and magic reign supreme as an evil miasma overtakes the region. Which, what are you trying to say, Garth?
My aunt lives in Scotland. She says it's quite nice.
Well, she's wrong.
Along with two countries, there are two kinds of magic. Charter magic, which is defined by order and life, and free magic, which is defined by chaos and death. Dead creatures, which plague the Old Kingdom by the time Sabriel journeys to it, are made out of free magic. And while there are many different types of dead with differing degrees of power, the main thing you need to know about them is that, unless you're the Abhorsen and you can put down or bind these baddies, you'd better run away real fast. The Abhorsen, it turns out the word is a title, not a name, is someone who uses both types of magic, and who can summon and bind the dead while also being responsible for putting down any escaped or unruly dead. To aid them in their duties, the Aporson possesses the Book of the Dead, a great big book of magic, and 7 bells, each with their own unique names and abilities.
The ringing of the bell commands you.
Also, the cat that is not actually a cat, which I remember from my childhood, is named Mogget. He is an ancient free magic being bound to serve the Aporson through charter magic, and part of this binding makes him take on the form of a white cat. Despite not actually being a cat, Mogget has taken on many cat-like qualities over the centuries, which explains how he can get high on catnip. If he gets unbound though, then the Aporson better watch out. This is all pretty complex, but one of the strengths of Sabriel is that Nyx understands that big books of magic or systems of casting aren't really important in terms of their rules or minutiae, but simply in how they advance the plot. Knowing the full details of things helps deepen your appreciation of the story, but for the most part, all you really need to know is that Sabriel is fighting a baddie, or tracking her father, or communing with the dead. The plot always continues at a brisk pace, like an Edgar Rice Burroughs novel, and the end result is that the novel never wastes your time with info dumps or mountains of exposition. While I enjoyed this aspect of the novel and found unique details like the bells or the wall refreshing and unconventional, there was one aspect of the world building that did disappoint me. That being its use of a trope which I hate: midichlorians. Midichlorians is the term I use to describe when a character is intensely powerful or gifted, but they got this power because they were born that way. Maybe they augment their power through training and discipline, but their blood or genetics are ultimately the things that make them special. I've seen some clever subversions of this trope in my time, but for the most part I think it's a deeply toxic idea, that certain people are inherently better than others by virtue of their birth. And it's especially toxic when it appears in media aimed at kids or young adults. It's like, hey kid, you want to achieve your dreams? Well, you'll only ever be able to do that if you're special. If you're only ordinary, you will never be anything. Sabriel is a prodigy at magic because Aporson is her father. That's it. Nyx at least makes it so that Aporson has been training Sabriel from a young age, so her abilities aren't entirely the product of natural talent, but she never would have been able to obtain the skills she possesses unless she had the inherited potential in the first place. Not only that, but the Old Kingdom operates under the laws of divine right and royal blood. Yes, the dead stalking the Old Kingdom are certainly contributing to its decay and ruin, but the real source of the problem is that no one with the right blood is sitting on the throne. The thing is, while this all somewhat sours Sabriel for me, it doesn't outright kill my enjoyment. I'm willing to give Nyx the benefit of the doubt and assume that he didn't intend these implications with Sabriel, and merely chose Sabriel's inherited power and the Old Kingdom's ties to its ruler because it's a simple way to advance the plot. Everything about Sabriel is tightly constructed around the quickest, most efficient way to get from point A to point B. So, while the inclusion of midichlorians isn't a choice I enjoy, it is one I understand. Now, if in the sequels Nyx starts to have the characters say things like, "Oh, I don't think we should be allowing the colored races to enter our country," then I might start to worry, but in Sabriel, the trope is merely a mild frustration. What does Sabriel have to say? Apart from the unfortunate implications of certain people being born better than others, not much. Part of Sabriel's journey involves her learning to cope with loss and grief, but it isn't really dwelt on. The main thrust of the book is in exploring the world and creating a sense of adventure, so whatever deeper themes Sabriel possesses ultimately comes secondary to that. You could be doing worse with the negative message on blood and inheritance, but you could be doing better with a positive message on grief and loss. That being said, if you do crave action and adventure, then Sabriel delivers spectacularly. Final verdict. Sabriel is not a very ambitious book. The characters, themes, and structure of the narrative are all pretty simple and basic. However, rather than shallowness, this quality lends tautness to the novel. Everything in Sabriel feels necessary and precise. It never wastes your time or lectures you, but instead chooses to deliver an action-packed adventure through a genuinely interesting and unique fantasy world. So, while I didn't find Sabriel a very deep book, I did find it a truly charming one, for which it gets a 7 out of 10. There's so much more to this world of the Old Kingdom, and I'm honestly curious to see what other places and ideas can be explored, but Nyx tells the story he wants to tell without distractions or slog, and for that, I have to admire it. In the meantime, I'm Marco Keen, signing off, and I hope you liked this video. If you did, and you'd like to see me make more, please leave a like or comment down below, share my video via Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or other means, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you all, and I will see you in the next one.